Dark paths are what we tend to go down, right?
Yeah.
That's the natural path to go down. And you really have to have some awareness to not go down dark paths. Because how many people can say that all the expectations that they have every year are always met?
No.
No, I don't think anybody can say that, right? Like, there's always going to be something that you're disappointed in, or you're upset with someone because you had an expectation that was unvoiced and that the other person didn't agree to. Like we're all tyrants naturally,
Yeah.
right? We all think, oh, well, my way's the best way, and everyone should just do this,
Yeah.
and we don't even know why.
Right.
It reminds me of this story of somebody I know that. So this gets back to a marriage story, right? So the husband's like, okay, so the wife's making a pot roast, and she's cutting the ends off the pot roast, and he's like, why are you cutting the ends off the pot roast? She's like, well, that's how you make a pot roast. And he's like, well, why? She's like, I don't know, it's just the way that you do it. And then he was with her mother one, and he's like, so why do you cut the ends of the pot roast? She's like, well, that's just how you do it. I don't know why, but that's just the way you prepare a pot roast. And then he had the chance to talk to the grandma because he was really curious about this. And he's like, okay, I got a question for you. Do you cut the ends off your pot roast? And she's like, yeah. And he said, well, why? And she was able to answer because she said, well, back when I was growing up, we cut the ends off the pot roast so it could fit in the pan because we didn't have other pans that were bigger.
Yeah.
And we had an oven that was only a certain size or however, I don't know. I think it was an oven, right? And so we had to cut the ends off some pot roasts because they were too big to fit it. And so he's like, wow, that was amazing to think about, like, that logical reason why ends were cut off a pot roast. It had nothing to do with the pot roast itself. It was just a practical thing that they had to do, like back in like the 40s or the 30s or back in the Depression, right? Or whatever it was. And so now he's like, okay, honey, do you know why you cut the ends off a pot roast? She's like, no. And he said, well, this is what your grandma said. So they stopped cutting the ends off the pot roast. And now the pot roast actually is better because now all the juices are trapped inside and it doesn't dry out as fast. And it's actually better to not cut the ends off the pot roast. Now, there may be some people listening to this and saying, well, yeah, you cut the ends off a pot roast because that's what you do. Well, maybe this little story that I just told may enlighten you, but I think that we can apply this story to so many things.
Oh, yeah.
Why do we do certain things? Why do we have certain expectations? We can't answer that question a lot of times. It's just what we do. And this is just what we expect. And this is what it means to be polite, and this is what it means to be impolite.
Yeah.
Right? We assign definitions to certain actions, and what a crappy way to live. And we all do to some degree.
Yeah. And we will continue to do that unless we have an awareness about it and learn, different ways to approach that, the concept of expectations and how we do things. So I also think that this can show up in a marriage, even in the context of like what we think our in-laws should be doing and should not be doing.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, when we get married and we have our first baby, our parents, both sets of parents, should be there. They should be there for the birth. They should be there to help for the first month, help us transition into parenthood, right? We can have all these expectations of what our in-laws should be doing. And then if they don't have those same expectations and don't do those things, man, again, it gives us an opportunity to just be mad at them and think negative about them when these are all expectation traps. So our in-laws might have their own expectations about how Christmas should go, right? Like she's thinking about her oldest son and his wife, right? So when they come over, maybe she thinks, oh, they're the ones that should bring homemade rolls.
Or something.
Yes. And maybe I didn't grow up with that type of expectation, so I show up with nothing.
Yeah.
I think this concept of expectations and how we're supposed to do things and should do things can really affect our relationship with our in-laws. And if it does come down where we even attribute those negative feelings towards our spouse, this really is going to cause some contention and make it challenging to be in the mood to want to be intimate with our spouse.
Well, yeah, there's nothing less sexy than your spouse trying to be like your in-laws
Yeah.
or like someone else, right? Like I married you because you're you and you're unique. And it's a shame that there have been times when I'm like, wow, she's not doing this. And it's like, your uniqueness comes with you not doing certain things.
Yes.
And there's trade-offs, right? And this is the thing about uniqueness, getting back to the title of this episode, right? Our uniqueness is sexy.
Yes.
And one of the things that makes it sexy is that it's the adventure, it's the journey, it's the challenge, right? That is what life is all about. And if you're just conforming and we're expecting our spouse especially to just conform, how boring is that? Because guess what? If I expect that from you, you're going to lose all motivation and you're going to lose the vitality of your life and who you are. And you're going to get exhausted and you're going to be miserable and you're going to want to divorce me.
Yeah.
Because now all of a sudden you can't be you.